Was your C-section or your induction or whatever medical intervention you had last time, was it really necessary? And if you're a first-time mom and you're just watching this now and you're like, I haven't had a C-section yet, I think I'm going to have a natural birth, I'm going to invite you to pay attention, because this is going to help you avoid what so many of these moms who have already had a C-section wish you could know, so that you don't go through this trauma. Okay, so you don't ever have to be on the other side. You don't ever have to worry about getting the birth you want after trauma. You will be able to have the first experience of having that beautiful empowered birth and be able to go on to have more empowered births after that and maybe tweak one or two things, but it won't be that deep trauma that you have to heal. So this is all about reframing it though, because oftentimes what happens with my clients is that they have come to the place where they're like, I should be able to have a natural birth. I desperately want one. And they've done a lot of work on themselves to get to that point where they actually want to try for a VBAC. They actually want to go for it. But there's so many moms that don't. There's so many moms out there that think that they have to have another C-section or they have to have an induction. Their body doesn't work. It's broken and defective. And the medical system just absolutely loves to perpetuate this. In fact, earlier today, I was in a local forum and a mom was saying how she has to choose between these two OB practices, neither one of which supports natural birth, by the way. And I know this because I happen to have a very wide network down here in the Lower Mainland, and I know which hospitals to avoid, and I know exactly what doctors to avoid. There's certain cities where I would say all of them, go with a midwife or go to a neighboring city and talk to those doctors, because these ones don't support physiological birth. They've never seen it. They're going to sabotage it. They're going to scare the crap out of you. They're going to do everything they can to push you into intervention. Like, this is what happens, is that we've got a birth culture of fear, and our medical system perpetuates that, not always out of malice, but sometimes there are those people that just really, really like to do C-sections. And in this case, this mom did not specify why she had to have a C-section. She just said that she had to. So I do the benefit of the doubt, and I always point out that you may be able to actually have a VBAC. And there's questions that you want to ask. If you want to know more about that, just go and check out my YouTube channel. I have a video on that. I'll be teaching more about that in the future. It'll probably end up being another book at some point. Your Empowered Birth also goes into a little bit of detail with it. You can ask the right questions. And what I'm going to be sharing with you also will help. But Nurse Karen got all pissy, and she decided to jump in and say, well, you don't actually know why she has to plan another C-section. And I said, well, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt, being that I've been in the birth community for the last 10 years, being that I happen to know quite a lot about that area and the mess. And I've been serving women who were told multiple times, oh, you won't be able to have a vaginal birth after cesarean. You can't have a natural birth. You're high risk. You're too old. You're too fat. You have had 3 C-sections, like all of these things. And you know what they did? They freaking got their VBACs. So if they can do it, and they had all of these odds stacked against them, then I am very, very skeptical of the idea that it has to automatically be a C-section. I mean, even if you decide you do want a C-section, there's no reason why you can't choose to go into labor first and then have a C-section. Unless there's the possibility that having even one contraction would be catastrophic, in which case you're in a very, very rare, tiny 10 to 15% case here in terms of what could actually happen. And you must have severe, severe complications, and it needs to be an empowered decision. But if it's not, you could even have a VBAC if you had gestational diabetes. You could have a VBAC if you had type 1 diabetes. You could have a completely natural hands-off birth if you happen to be over 41. You could have a completely natural hands-off birth if you happen to have a high body mass index. You could have a completely natural hands-off birth if you had multiple C-sections before, or if you had only ever been induced before. The fact is that your body will birth. And that is one thing that the medical system does not advertise at all, because it's more profitable for you to agree to that induction, that C-section. It's how the business model works. This is an unfortunate thing about our society. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of scare tactics. And this is why we really need to reframe when we're thinking about our last traumatic birth, or thinking about those traumatic births that happened to our friends, to our family, to the moms in the mom groups. And we're looking at those stories, but we're not seeing the whole picture. And so that's what I teach inside of Your Empowered Birth. It's what I teach in all of my programs, what I've taught my clients to do. It's in chapter 7 of Your Empowered Birth. It's under the chapter for how to heal and get the birth you want the next time. And it's all about reframing your mindset. So it's step 1, reframe your birth story. And I'm going to read from this. And again, the book is now officially available on Amazon. You can go and get it. Links in the bio. I'm seeing so much happening right now where there's a lot of pushback from the medical system. They are pushing moms into inductions for things as ridiculous as, oh, your cervix is opening before labor. We should probably induce you. So they're wanting to induce you if your cervix is opening, and they want to induce you if your cervix is not opening. They just want to induce you. And this is such a huge problem, and it's causing a lot of trauma, and it's leading to you doubting yourself, having horrible things happen during your birth. After and postpartum, your recovery is a lot longer. It can affect breastfeeding. It can affect the way that you see yourself, how you see your family, how you see your baby. It traumatizes your partner. Like, there is really no end to what birth trauma has done to our society over the last several generations. And it's gotten to the point where people have completely forgotten how natural birth is actually supposed to be, and they fall into those natural birth traps. So, step 1 to get the birth you want after having previous trauma, or if you're a first-time mom, what to make sure that you're watching for when people are telling their scary stories to you is this: reframing your birth story. Here's the reality. What they did can't be undone, but that doesn't mean that you can't have better this time. That's what this section is about: healing and moving forward after a traumatic birth. I've served hundreds of mothers who have been traumatized and shown them parts of the map to a better birth that they hadn't been able to see the first time. The 5 pillars of empowered birth have helped them question what they were told about what happened to them, so they could see that their bodies were not broken. Many of these mothers have gone on to have home births, VBACs, which is vaginal birth after cesarean, and avoid another painful induction. Some of my favorite stories are those of moms who have had a vaginal birth after multiple cesareans, and that's like my favorite clients to help too. Or even breech vaginal births at home. These are the kinds of births where it's nearly impossible to find support, and few care providers will attend them. And yet, against the odds, these moms have done it anyway. So what set them apart from others who just resigned themselves to repeat cesareans and gave up their power, thinking that's just the way birth is? They believed that they could have better. And then they went after it. This sounds like a simple thing to do, but the fact is that a lot more goes into it. Deciding that you will never again give up your power is easy. But taking the action and acting in spite of fear is what's harder. The 5 pillars will help you with that too. It's the secret to getting everything you want. And the steps that were outlined in the previous chapter will help you reclaim your power. That's why even if you are a second-time mom, you're going to want to read the chapter before this one, even though it's technically geared for the first birth, because it will show you the mistakes that you were making the last time that you won't want to make again. And the journal exercises will work for you as well, because you'll be able to look at it from what was my thought process when I was a first-time mom versus now, and you'll be able to really dive deep with that. So, I have to level with you though. It's not going to be as easy to get past your fear now that you've already seen firsthand what can happen. Those images and feelings stick with you. Those doubts are going to come up. They even came up for me, okay? And I literally built this system. So yeah, it's a lot, and you can still do it. So you're going to be asking yourself, what if I'm really broken? And you're going to have moments where something happens that leads you to fearing that you're going to wind up right where you were last time. If you had a cesarean, you are going to wonder whether you are even capable of birthing naturally. If you were induced, you will wonder if you'll go overdue again. If you feel like you didn't fight hard enough, you might worry you'll crumble under the pressure again. I get it. I had those fears too, though mine were around being told that I was no longer allowed to birth at home and pushing again for 3 hours. Here's the secret to getting past those fears. Pretend that the hospital doesn't exist. Seriously. So what I do when I first sit down with my clients is I ask them what they would do if they suddenly found themselves too far away from a hospital. This is part of the reframe, by the way. So I ask them what they might do if they went into labor on the highway. What if the baby came too fast and they birthed in a taxi? What if they were at home? What if the roads were snowed in and they couldn't leave their house? What if they just suddenly went into labor in their bathroom and it was so fast that they couldn't even dial 911? Well, in all of these scenarios, one of two things would happen. Either they would fail to progress and help would arrive because emergency responders don't really wait around, or the baby would come and they'd do it themselves. This is what I want you to consider. Birth is a physiological process like sneezing and going to the bathroom. You take for granted that your body can do these things, right? Well, when a baby is ready to come, that baby doesn't wait. Your body is designed to expel that baby, and it doesn't care that you're not in the hospital. Now, I know you don't want to birth in the back of a taxi or in that abandoned cabin in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you can if you want. Like, I'm not saying you can't, but like, if you don't want to, you don't have to. I'm not telling you to do that, obviously, but the most important thing to recognize is that if that scenario did happen, you could do it. This is true whether you had a cesarean, were induced, or had a forceps delivery. It's true even if your doctor insists that your small pelvis was to blame for your difficult labor. It's true even if you failed to progress and they gave you Pitocin. The reality is that the story you were told about why your birth plan failed is not the full truth. If it was, then there wouldn't be stories of unplanned vaginal breech births or home births after cesarean, or births where the mom was unprepared but somehow managed to have an unassisted birth. In the cases where these births were a surprise, the mothers are regarded as heroes and warriors. They are called brave. But if you plan to birth without intervention, especially if you had a previously difficult birth, then people will tell you that you're being reckless. They'll question your sanity. They'll vilify you and tell you that you're putting your experience above your baby. They're wrong to do that. And often what's really going on is that they're operating from their own flawed stories. I almost died might have felt true. But would that same situation have happened if you had been with a different care provider in a different birth location with the knowledge you are acquiring right now? I didn't go into labor on my own might have a different meaning once you discover that you are a 42-week mama and that your doctor didn't even give you enough time to go into labor, but instead stressed you out and pushed an induction. My pelvis was too small might just be proven false once you examine the circumstances of how you had been birthing and who was attending you. Leg position matters as much as being off your back, And often doctors can rush the pushing stage because they are operating on the assumption that birthing must be efficient and complete in a certain time limit rather than just take as long as it takes. Now, it might be possible that you run into the same issues, and that's a big if. More likely, what you will find is that your body works, always did work, and you were just another unfortunate victim of the same maternity care system that operates like a McDonald's drive-thru. Before you start examining those old stories, though, you need to understand something else. If you are still stuck in trauma, you can't look at things objectively. In fact, trying to go back and retrace the steps of your previous birth can be incredibly triggering. For this reason, I encourage you to go beyond the scope of this book and look into trauma therapy. Seriously, I'm telling you this. Okay, so I promise you won't need too many sessions. Actually, Jenny only needed 4, and she had the most traumatic birth ever. But when I encouraged her to go to trauma therapy, she was just amazed at how much better she was healing. And I showed her this back in December, and she was healed by the end of January. So the kind I find most helpful is called EMDR. This is the same one that Jenny did. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It helps you take certain images and memories of events during your birth and file them away so that they no longer haunt you. In fact, I did this too. So it's kind of like defragmenting your computer hard drive, if we still even do that anymore. I'm guilty of forgetting that. Once you've done this, your next step is to get your birth records. So you can ask the hospital or your care provider to send them to you. Legally, you are allowed to do this. They're your records. So if you're already pregnant, then you can also bypass the receptionist and the red tape by asking your current care provider for a copy of all of your records. And I actually did this. So they already had them faxed over or sent electronically. So there's no reason they can't give them to you. This is what I did with my midwives. I actually had them give me my birth records. And that's when I found out that what I had been told about my son not growing properly was a lie. That's when I got good and mad and wrote a complaint letter. So you can't fully process your story until you have the full picture. Having your records will give you that picture, and it will also help you to see where your previous care team might have lied to you. It happens more than you would think. This is why I suggested therapy first. If that happens, then having the tools to calm and regulate your nervous system will help you get past that feeling faster, and you'll be able to continue gathering those details. Seriously, it can be incredibly triggering when you were taught one thing, you were told one thing, and then you go and look at your records and you see that it was actually something completely different, that your C-section didn't need to happen, that they actually gaslit you, lied to you, and it's in the records that they've done this, and it's so different from your own experience, and you realize that there is no way that they are going to be able to own up to what they actually did because they covered their butts. This is so traumatizing. It's upsetting. It's happened to so many women that I know and who I've helped, including Jenny. Jenny got this. I got this. And Jenny actually created a way to write an effective complaint letter. So if you ever want to know more about that, go check her out at thebirthhousenetwork.com. because she actually put out that system. I encouraged her to do that as well. She took what I taught her and she went beyond. There's also resources at the back of this book in Your Empowered Birth where you will be able to find more information on where to get stuff. And not only that, but I've also created an additional extra little guide called How to Heal Your Birth Trauma. So there's actual steps that you can take. I go deeper into that. And that's an extra that you can get when you get Your Empowered Birth. And the URL is actually in this book. And you will be able to go and get that as well. Why did I put so much out? Because again, I'm committed to you knowing this information. Whether you can work with me directly or not, whether you can sign up for my programs or not, whether the money is there or not, this book is so accessible. I made sure that there was at least a Kindle version that was under $15. So if you're Canadian, it's under $15, and if you're American, then it's like basically $10. And I did that because I wanted to make sure that you could get your empowered birth no matter what. No matter how much I have to raise my prices, no matter what else I'm working on, I wanted to make sure that that was there for you. Because this is it's just time. I'm just so done with seeing these stories of these moms who keep getting traumatized over and over and over again and thinking that they have no options. It just breaks my heart. And what happened to me wasn't right. Being gaslit as a first-time mom, being told I didn't know anything, finding out later that actually my intuition was spot on and that I could have had that home birth was devastating. What happened to my friends was even worse. They had C-sections, and some of them were really traumatic. Some of them led to complications later that they're dealing with for the rest of their lives. One of my friends, Christine, she has dense adhesions from her surgery with her first baby. She did get her VBAC. She actually had a surprise home birth after cesarean, but she's still dealing with that pain. And the thing is that you can't go back and do over that part. You can only move forward. So this is why I say you need to be able to heal. You need to be able to get your birth records. You need to be able to reframe your story. And there's questions inside of this guide as well. So there's actually 5 questions just on this part for journal entries that you can start asking about the fears and beliefs that you had, what your environment was like, and so forth, what kind of support you had. You're going to be able to go deeper into that when you pick up this book, because this is not like any other birth book out there. Instead of it just being information, which is great in itself, one of the missing pieces that I noticed was that you can get all the information, but if you don't get past your fears, if you don't get past that conditioning that society has really placed on us to make us doubt ourselves, then it doesn't work. There's too much cognitive dissonance happening. That's one of the psychological terms. I recognized it, that there was so much cognitive dissonance, and I saw it in my family. I saw it in like people that were older than me. I saw it in my friends. I saw it in just how the healthcare system works. There is that belief that our bodies are broken and defective. And then on top of that, we've been taught to see others as more in authority than we are and to defer to these experts all the time. But they're telling us the same rhetoric that's not letting us trust our intuition. And I don't want that for you. I want you to have that beautiful empowered birth. So your empowered birth is now officially on Amazon. You can go and order a copy at any price point. This book is worth more than gold. In fact, when I was working with Rebecca, her story is actually in this book. Her partner ended up telling me that they saved $30,000 in medical fees by working with me to be able to have their home birth, because otherwise it would have been another C-section. And because they were in the States, they'd have to pay that hefty price tag for their insurance. I mean, we don't have that here in Canada. But even just having to go for sessions after sessions for birth trauma, or if you're dealing with medical complications that could have been completely avoided, or you're dealing with something with your baby because maybe you weren't able to breastfeed, or maybe they had some birth trauma as they were being pulled out, like all of these things really add up. And you know what? You deserve to have the most beautiful experience of your birth. You deserve to have that initiation into motherhood, to be that transformative and transcendent moment when you go from just being mom to, or like expecting mom, to full-on mother, or when you are now morphing into a bigger version of yourself where maybe you had 1 child or 2 children before, but now you're a mother of 3. Like, you transform every time. And that's just the thing, is like your empowered birth doesn't really advocate for one way of birth or the other. This is about you taking your power back, recognizing what is right for you. The empowered birth model is simply this. We aim for a physiological birth, and then we pull back as needed when those interventions are needed. And I don't tell you what to do. My clients can attest to this, where if they choose to go to the hospital, I'm not going to tell them not to. I'm going to ask them what their intuition is telling them. And some of my clients do transfer. They choose to transfer and they feel empowered in that decision. And that comes again from going through this book and understanding the system and how it works and unlearning all of those things that you were taught. In fact, Jenny even said recently that this book is so on point, which was high praise, because Jenny is also my biggest critic. And she has even told me in the past, Carly, your emails are too long. I was falling asleep during this one. So, I mean, if she's going to tell me that my book is on point, I know that it's actually on point. She's not just pandering to me, because she will also tell me when something is not working. So again, just go pick up your copy. Follow me on my social media. Make sure you're also checking out the YouTube channel, because I'm going to be sharing more videos. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your support. Tell others where to get this book. It's just empoweringmomsbirth.com/book. It's now also on my website in the menu. I put that up today. And you can go and check the link in the bio, because I have my link tree up and you can check the URL. Or just go check Amazon. It's there. All right. Thank you so much for watching. I love you, and I'll see you soon. Bye.